The morning rush of Hongo-san Kome spilled past the torii like a river of umbrellas and briefcases. But the little Kitsune Inari shrine remained, an eddy of quiet. Hoshino Aoi swept fallen camphor leaves from the stone path, keeping her head respectfully bowed in case any commuter bothered to glance inside. The broom was mostly a prop. She did not need her eyes to feel the fragile thing that mattered. A reddish filament, no thicker than the line a brush leaves on rice paper, fluttering from her left ring finger as though it were a torn kite string. Everyone carried such a thread, though most never knew it. Since childhood, Aoi had seen them lashed between strangers in the subway, coiling tenderly between an elderly couple feeding sparrows, or zigzagging out into the distance in search of someone yet unmet. The threads vibrated with possibility, sometimes bright as fresh lacquer, sometimes dull as rust. Only hers, paradoxically, was both. Where it emerged from her skin, it glowed a healthy cinnabar, but half a meter away it frayed into fuzzy strands that shed red dust when the wind blew. It had been that way since the night her mother died, and her father vanished into sake bottles, and debt, not cut exactly, but one strong tug from slipping apart completely. She received her body, and then her beliefs and her ideals. Her whole life. Her Oi's superior, Chief Priest Kanda, believed she was merely dutiful. He did not know she scrubbed the Kamanyu statues longer than necessary to mask the smell of burning silk at her fingertip. She had begged the kami for mending, offered white rice and fresh water and perfect bows. But even fox gods could not tie what destiny itself had allowed to rot. She straightened when she sensed a visitor. Before she heard him, the gate's bells chimed twice, hesitant, not the rapid jangle of a tourist. He was tall, foreign, the type who usually arrived with a guidebook in one hand and a phone in the other, seeking picturesque corners for social media. Yet this man handled no devices, only a leather notebook crammed with loose pages. His sandy hair was damp from drizzle. Wire-rimmed glasses magnified pale gray eyes attentive to every carving along the corridor of Scarlet Torii. "Good morning," Aoi greeted in neat English. "May I help you with worship?" He answered in surprisingly fluent Japanese, only faintly accented. "If it is no trouble. I study historical linguistics, kanji orthography in particular. I came to see the Bunsei-era Ema your shrine supposedly keeps." Aoi had forgotten the small wooden plaques, donations from 1823. Stored in the kura to protect their faded ink, she bowed. "We rarely display them, they are brittle." "That's exactly why I must see them," he said, expression brightening. "There are rumors they contain archaic hiragana not catalogued elsewhere." She gestured toward the office. "Please sign the guest book. We require both name and institution." He wrote in careful brush strokes. Elliot Ward, Tokyo University Fellowship. While he signed, Aoi stole a glance at the space near his hand. A red thread extended, solid and taut, disappearing beyond the gate attached then, but not to him. She followed its trajectory until the perspective of the street swallowed it. Some threads were long distance, she reminded herself. There was no telling. "Ward sensei," she said, guiding him across the courtyard. "I will retrieve the key." When she returned, he was photographing the Imarac. Though he had claimed no devices, apparently his phone remained hidden after all. She unlocked the kura door, and the scent of cedar and damp paper floated out. Inside, dust motes spiraled like tiny planets around bundles of votive plaques, rolled scrolls, and cracked mirrors. Elliot hunched over the work table with reverence, setting down acid-free tissue to cradle each plaque. Oi's job became holding a soft lamp at precise angles while he deciphered spider-leg strokes. "What does this one say?" he murmured, pointing to a row of unfamiliar lines. "It looks like kumimoji, but the radicals are distorted." Aoi squinted. She recognized the word musubi repeated thrice, oseksubi. but rendered in a cursive variant that curled at the end like ribbon. Musubi meant tying, connection, marriage even. Heat prickled her cheeks. It's a prayer to the deity of binding, she answered softly. Binding as in marriage? Elliot asked. Fate. She dared not elaborate on how literal that word felt to her. Hours slipped by, rain intensified, drumming the tiled roof. Elliot traced strokes in the air to memorize them, occasionally repeating phonetic readings. Mu, su, bi. Each time he pronounced the syllables, Aoi's frayed thread twitched like a cat's ear. She dismissed the coincidence until a stray spark leapt from the silk and singed her sleeve. She gasped, dropping the lamp. Elliot steadied it before it shattered. Are you okay? Static, she lied, flexing the burnt fabric to hide the hole. The thread had shortened. Its ragged end now hovered nearer her fingertip, as though respooling. Elliot flipped through his notebook. Listen to this, he said, enthusiasm overriding concern. I think these plaques form a liturgy, except the order is scrambled. If we arrange them properly, the pattern of repeated kanji creates a chiasmus-like classical rhetoric. Why would a shrine prayer follow rhetorical structure? Memory, maybe? Or aesthetics? But what if it's also functional? He tapped the plaque where Musubi gleamed. This character appears at pivot points. Mi Musubi mireng. Mireng itself. A knot within language. His metaphor struck Aoi too sharply. She excused herself to fetch tea, needing distance. In the kitchen, she stared at her finger. The thread now ended in a bundle of loose filaments whose ends glimmered as though eager to rejoin. She felt neither pain nor relief, only trembling anticipation, like standing on a train platform moments before the doors hiss open. When she returned, Elliot had rearranged 10 plaques into 2 columns. He spoke while she poured sencha. The chorus lines read, thread of crimson, thread of dawn, thread of two become one. Then there's an imperative in archaic verb form, something like, entreat to bind again? Aoi nearly dropped the teapot. Bind again? Yes, fascinating, right? It suggests divorcees or widows prayed for second unions. He grinned apologetically. Sorry, academic curiosity can sound morbid. By the way, may I copy the calligraphy? I'd like to test a phonological theory. She nodded, distracted by his words, bind again. Could a second union include the reunion of a thread sundered too soon? That night, after locking the cura, she knelt before the inner sanctuary. Kitsune Saka, she whispered, is this coincidence or invitation? The offering candles fluttered, though no wind entered. She took their swaying for yes. Elliot became a fixture over the next week. He arrived at dawn, marked by the smell of bookstore ink and the creak of leather satchel. Aoi guided him through storage chests, handing him flaking afuda like delicate bones. Meanwhile, she observed his thread. It always glowed healthy. But something about its vibration changed when he spoke the resurrected characters aloud. Their brushstrokes hummed and the surrounding air thickened as if the shrine itself held its breath. On Thursday, he asked whether the inner sanctuary door could be opened for closer inspection of the dedicatory tablets. She hesitated. Visitors rarely entered that sacred compartment. Yet she sensed the kami were not opposed. Foxes valued mischief and innovation. So she produced the brass key. Inside, an antique mirror reflected them with dreamy blur. Above hung should-age paper streamers and a faded silk rope knotted in a bowline. Elliot unfolded his sketchbook filled with the Musubi liturgy, now reordered into stanzas. If my pronunciation is off, correct me, he said, standing before the altar. I am going to recite the full text. Aoi's pulse thudded. Perhaps you should do so outside. This is private ritual space. But the acoustics here replicate the conditions under which the plaques were created, he argued gently. Sound shapes memory. I promise respect. She acquiesced, knees rooted to tatami. Elliot cleared his throat and began, his tongue wrapped around obsolete kana like a musician restoring forgotten notes. The words flowed, soft, elongated vowels, clipped consonants forming loops and crossings alternately taut and slack. As he reached the refrain, Aka no ito, yoke no ito, the air rippled, the mirror quivered, surfaces silvering and unsilvering. Howie's breath seized. Her own thread whipped forward, filaments reconverging. It stretched toward Elliot, toward the calligraphy in his hands, seeking something to bind. With each subsequent stroke, a filament braided into another, twisting into a cord so vibrant it spilled light onto the tatami. Elliot finished, exhaled, and turned. Well? She could not speak. The cord connecting them shone solid as lacquer, no longer ragged. It extended from her finger across empty space into his. The impossible had occurred without his knowledge. She felt warmth surge through her palm into her chest, a lazy sun emerging after long rain. He misread her silence. Too loud? I'm sorry. Aoi swallowed. No, that was beautiful. Did you notice the harmonic overtones? The room itself responded. My voice sounded doubled inside my ears. She nodded faintly. She dared not reveal the truth. Not here, not when she herself did not yet know what it meant. That night's sleep evaded her. She opened the fusima to glimpse the city skyline, neon veins threading high rises. In that glow, her new chord pulsed. Linked to Elliot, it throbbed with possibilities. Friendship, love, heartbreak. She shivered. An unbreakable tie was blessing and burden alike. When dawn tinged the horizon peach, she walked barefoot to the hondon. Kitsune statues watched through quartz eyes. She bowed. You repaired me, she said, voice wobbling. But at what cost to him? He doesn't even believe. The breeze trickled through bamboo leaves, rattling them like dice. She felt a rustle inside her skull, a thought that was not precisely language. Musubi chooses, it is not chosen. If fate decided, resistance was futile. Yet consent mattered to hearts even when destiny was mute. She resolved to tell Elliot everything, however absurd it sounded to academic ears. Opportunity came sooner than expected. Elliot arrived early, cheeks flushed with excitement. I cross-referenced the liturgy against an Edo period diary, he said, waving photocopies. A certain priestess writes that reciting the prayer in mirror chambers rewove threads unseen. Do you know what that implies? Oe braced herself. I do. It's metaphor, of course, but chillingly vivid. She claims she felt a tug on her finger afterward. Imagine believing language could literally stitch destiny, she inhaled. It is not metaphor. Elliot paused mid-stride. Pardon? She invited him to sit on the engawa overlooking a mossy courtyard. What I tell you must remain secret, she began. I risk my position. He listened, brows knit as she recounted seeing threads all her life, her mother's gentle cord fraying during illness, her own near extinction, and yesterday's miracle. She ended by displaying her hand. The red thread glimmered in morning light like a hair of sunset. She tugged it gently. He felt nothing, but his hand twitched involuntarily, responding to a pull he could not detect. Silence lodged between them until he spoke, voice small. Am I hallucinating, or are you? Neither, she said. Folk tales call them akaito. You restored mine. He rubbed his temple. I consider myself open-minded, but empirical training insists. He trailed off, eyes widening at her finger. I cannot see it, yet I sense pressure here. He pressed the base of his ring finger, like blood pulsing. The thread, she exhaled. I did not ask for this. You deserve choice. Elliot stood, pacing. Pigeons fluttered from the eaves at his sudden movement. Choice, he repeated. Does such a bond supersede free will? If I boarded a plane tomorrow, would it snap? It might thin, but it would pursue you. She clasped her sleeves to still shaking palms. In legend, severing the thread brings calamity. Then suppose I stay, he said, eyes locking on hers. What does destiny actually demand? Marriage? Friendship? Collaboration on a journal article? A nervous laugh escaped him. I just met you. Aoi found herself smiling for the first time in months. The thread's color is constant, but its meaning grows with us. I don't know what we're meant for. He sank onto the wooden step, shoulders slack. My grandmother believed in invisible patterns, he murmured, the embroidered Celtic knots saying stories live inside them. Maybe I've flown halfway around the world to find an echo. A crow cawed overhead, startling them both into laughter. So, he said, clearing his throat, we investigate together from a scientific and spiritual standpoint. Deal? Aoi's heart beat yes. Still, she asked, you're not afraid? Terrified, he admitted, but also exhilarated. Language once moved mountains of thought. Why not threads of fate? In the days that followed, Tokyo shimmered differently for them. At Jimboyocho, they sifted through worm-eaten volumes on marriage rites. At Kanda Myojin, they compared votive tablets to their own. Eliot experimented with phonetic intonations, while Aoi watched the chord respond thickening when vowels elongated, sparking when consonants clicked. One humid evening they rode the Chiyoda line south, their shoulders nearly touching though the carriage provided ample room. Neon advertisements flickered across window glass, painting them in violet and teal. Aoi felt the thread hum to the rhythm of the train. She turned to Eliot. In Japanese, musubi means more than tying, she said. It's also creation. When ropes twist, they birth new strength. He smiled. English has conjugation, from yoking together. Verbs bind subjects to meaning. He glanced at her right hand resting loose on her lap. Slowly, without presumption, he laid his own beside it. Not touching, just an invitation. She slid her pinky until it brushed his. The thread glowed softly, approving. He exhaled as though hearing music only now resolved to tonic. Feel that? Yes, she whispered. Harmony. Late September brought silver grasses and the festival of harvest moon. The shrine prepared lanterns while office workers queued for blessings of prosperity. Aoi and Eliot worked in tandem. She distributed protective charms, he explained the sake fermentation origins, written on faded Norn curtains to fascinated children. That night, after the crowd dispersed, they carried a folding table to the courtyard, an unpacked calligraphy set, and English fountain pen. Eliot proposed co-authoring an article, The Pragmatics of Belief, a case study in kanji liturgy and destiny semiotics. Aoi laughed until her sides ached. I can't publish about invisible threads. Then anonymize, he countered, tapping her forehead with the end of his brush. Academic camouflage. Meanwhile, we craft a new prayer modern kanji with hentegana flourishes to honor what we've learned. Aoi dipped brush into ink, daring to scribe the first stroke. She chose senui, but altered its tail into a shape resembling a fox's whisker. Eliot supplied old kana for the refrain. They wrote side by side, ink pooling like night water, until their arms brushed and the cord pulsed bright, lighting the page. When finished, they hung the plaque on a fresh cedar rack. Moonlight skimmed its wet ink, wind rose, ringing the prayer bells, though no worshippers tugged them. Aoi felt the deity's Cheshire fox grin behind the shadows. Eliot offered a wooden sake cup to Musubi, he toasted. She answered to words that bind. They drank. The city's skyscrapers loomed but felt less oppressive, as if the red thread, invisible yet strong, now tethered each tower to the earth in a subtle network of meaning, the same way kanji once tethered sound to silence. December's first snow dusted the shrine. Eliot's fellowship neared its end, yet his suitcase lay empty beneath his sublet futon. One evening, he found Aoi in the sanctuary, polishing brass offertory bowls. They invited me to extend, he said. A full research post. Her polishing slowed. Congratulations. He stepped closer. It doesn't pay much. I'd need modest lodgings. There's a vacant room in the priest's annex, she suggested lightly. He grinned. Is that permission? Conditional, she said, standing. Snowflakes drifted through the half open door, melting on tatami. She reached for his hand, guiding it to the red cord visible only to her. You must honor this. Give it slack when individuality demands, tension when unity requires. Threads snap from neglect as easily as from strain. Elliot laced his fingers with hers. I will study it until I know every filament. A gong echoed outside, acknowledging the hour. They bowed in unison to the altar, then to each other. A miko and a linguist, woven by forgotten kanji, resurrected in modern throat. Proof that language does not merely describe the world, but, under watchful eyes of playful kami, can rewrite it. Outside, the city shimmered, countless red threads crisscrossing the night, like a constellation only she could see. Except now one of them she shared, strong and intricately knotted, stretching forward into futures neither data nor divination could fully chart. Secured by prayers rediscovered and promises yet unspoken.